Peace to the 12. Y'all see the title. Kanye West exposed these people. I'll say it again. Kanye West exposed these people, right? And this is really going to be touching on a word and what it actually means versus the word and how it's used currently. And he's going to say some things that I'm going to back up with the scriptures and with history, right? And we're going to be going over the meaning of a word. This comes from a TMZ. It comes from a TMZ post. It says Kanye West talks to TMZ and stands by his anti-Shemtism. Says he can't be canceled. I have to say this word interestingly because of the YouTube algorithm. But anyway, right? So what is Sim? And what does this word even mean? And where does it come from? Right? And he says he can't be canceled. So for those of you that don't know, Sim or Shem, like the Bible calls him Shem or Shemitic. It comes from one of the three sons of Noah, which is Shem. Noah had three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I'm going to go over all this stuff briefly in this video, as well as showing my facts and evidence to what Kanye West says. And I'm going to show the screenshots of his subtitles. And also, before I go any further, because I already know people are going to say, oh, Kanye West is this and that. Listen, I don't really care much about any of these celebrities. I'm just going off what he said. And what he said was accurate. You know, I don't care about their personal lives or anything. I don't have high regards for any of these celebrities, all right? I'm not a fanboy. So anyway, let's go to this word, Sem or Shem or Semite, right? The word Semite, noun. A Semite can be a Jew, an Arab, an Assyrian, or an Aramaean. All right, it refers to a Semitic language group, and it comes from the line of Shem, one of the three sons of Noah, right? So it's interesting that they call his words anti-Shem when people insult the Arabs in America. Well, a lot of people in America, they're Islamophobic and they talk bad about the Arabs. Nobody calls their Arabic comments, their anti-Arabic comments, nobody calls them anti-Shem, even though the Arabs come from the line of Shem. Isn't that interesting? Same with the Assyrians and Aramaeans, right? Of course, the word anti means against or opposed. So it basically means against the children of Shem. That's what it means, right? And Semitic can be Hebrew, Arabic, Aramaic, Assyrian, right? In recent use, it often with the specific sense of you wish, but not historically so delimited. Yeah, because now they just use it for the you wish community, right? And let me also say that TMZ is owned by someone who is you wish, and he's also a lover of men. I'll just say it like that. Harvey Levin, all right? He's a lover of men, and he is part of the you wish community, right? He came out as gay in 2010, right? And yes, he is of Jewish descent, and yes, he is the founder of the website TMZ in 2005. So that's a little backstory on that. Now let's get to Mr. Kanye West's comments. Right? He says, I'm going to read the subtitle so I don't get taken down for copyright. He says, felt you know what I'm saying. I even said the apology and they still, and he says, some of the stuff I was saying was true. He said, some of the stuff I was saying was true. So until y'all come up and say, yo, what he was saying, some of what he was saying was true, then go ahead with all that. All right? And what is some of the things he said is true? That black people are Judeans. Black people are Jews according to the Bible. Right? And we are. And I'm going to prove that in this video. But he said some of the things I said was true. Well, I'm going to get two scriptures on truth real quick. Psalms 40:10. I have not hid thy righteousness within mine heart. I have declared thy faithfulness and thy salvation. I have not concealed thy loving kindness and thy truth from the great congregation. All right, we don't conceal the truth, right? And then John 8:32, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Right? So that's just a couple scriptures on the truth. Now let's continue on. So he says, some of the stuff I was saying was true. Then go ahead with all that. Do you take, then the reporter says, do you take back any of the anti-Shem etic stuff? And then he says, black people can't be anti-Shem etic. We are Jew. That's what he said. Black people can't be anti-Shem. We are Jew. Right? And he declared the truth, because that's the truth. We are of the line of Shem. All right? And I'm going to prove that in this video. Historically and biblically, I'm going to prove that. And anthropologically and things of that nature. But 2 Ezra 6:28 says, as for faith, it shall flourish. Corruption shall be overcome, and the truth which hath been so long without fruit shall be declared. And we're declaring the truth. All right, we're the Israelites. All right, we are the Israelites. Who do I mean by we? I'm talking about the so-called Negroes and the natives of the Americas, right? And those whose seed line can be traced back to the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, the Israelites. Go back to the line of Israel, who might look like other nations, but their seed line goes back to us. We the real deal, Holyfield, true Israelites. But anyway, with that, we're going to continue on. All right, he says, black people cannot be anti-Shem. We are Jew. You understand what I'm saying? We are Jew. So until you go do your facts, until you really do the facts, yeah, exactly. Let's do the facts, right? Now remember, a Semite is a Jew, an Arab, an Assyrian, or an Aramaean. Semitic means Shem. Really, a Semite is anyone that goes back to the line of Shem. Duh, right? And who is Shem? Well, you go to Genesis 6 and 10, it'll tell you. Genesis 6 and 10, and Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All right, that's where you get Semite, Shemitic, right? You go to Genesis 10 and 31. It says, these are the sons of Shem by their clans and languages and their territories and nations. All right. Genesis 10 and 22, the sons of Shem, or the children of Shem, Elam and Asher and Arphaxad and Lud and Aram. Right? And I'm gonna show y'all a little bit about Elam later on in this video, and then we're gonna touch on the Israelites, of course. But just for a little quick history lesson, Arphaxad, the sons of Shem, this guy right here, let me highlight it. This is Arphaxad. For those of you that don't know, through Arphaxad, you get Salah, which then you get Eber. And through Eber, you get Abram. And through Abram, that's Abraham. And that's where you get Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, Esau, and the Midianites, so on and so forth, right? So through Shem, one of his sons was Arphaxad. That's where you get Eber. And the term Hebrews is said to come from the word Eber. And then through Eber, you get Abram, which Abram's name was changed to Abraham. And Eber, let's prove that on Google. So the Hebrew comes from Eber. All right. It says a number of medieval scholars, such as Michael the Syrian, Bar Hebrus, and Agapius, the historian, mentioned the prevailing view that the Hebrews had received their name from Eber. All right. So a lot of people say that's where the term Hebrew comes from. All right. Which means what? Anybody that comes from Eber, anybody that comes from the line of Eber, they would be Hebrews, right? So you can have Hebrew Israelites, you can have Hebrew Edomites, Hebrew Elamites, right? Well, actually, you can't have Hebrew Elamites because he was the son of Elam. But you can have Hebrew Ishmaelites, Hebrew Edomites, Hebrew Israelites, right? They all come from Eber, right? Now, of course, my videos are only for the Hebrew Israelites. All my videos are for the 12 tribes of Israel. So I just wanted to touch on that little quick thing on Eber. And let's prove that Abram is really Abraham. You read that in Genesis chapter 17. We'll go to verse 5. It says, neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for a father of many nations have I made thee. Right? And through Abraham, you get Ishmael, Isaac, Keturah. All right, that's where the Midianites come from, so on and so forth. You also get the Israelites, the 12 tribes of Israel. You also get Esau, the Edomites. You also get the Ishmaelites and their 12 sons. They all come from Abraham, which means what? They would all be considered Hebrews because they're all related to Eber. And they all come from Abraham. But what? The Lord deals with who? Abraham, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the chosen line, right? Now, that being said, that's just a little history on the word Shem, Eber, our Faxad, our forefather Abraham, the Israelites, all that, the family tree. Now, let's prove Kanye's statements historically and biblically, all right, and anthropologically. So we're going to start off with historically, then we're going to end it off with biblically, right? So let's start with the history. This word Semite. All right, it says Semites, a term originally referring to those peoples listed in the table of nations in Genesis 10. We got that earlier, right? Genesis 10:22. Shem, Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, Aram, so on and so forth, right? So that's where we're going through the line of Shem, right? This just apply to one people group. But let's go here. It says the Jews and the Arabs, right? Dolichocephalic skulls, curly and abundant hair, slightly wavy or straight, strong beard, predominantly black, prominent straight alkaline nose, oval face. So they're predominantly black, meaning what? They have dark skin. All right, it says it right there, predominantly black. It also says dolichocephalic skulls. Well, who has dolichocephalic skulls? Right? Well, let's look at Google. Dolichocephalic skulls, dolichocephalic according to Retzius. It says dolichocephaly, according to Retzius, was the distinctive cranial feature of the earliest inhabitants of Europe. I've done videos on the ancient Europeans. Today, it is the characteristic of the Negro races of the Papuans, the Polynesians, and the Australians, though among the Negritos and some of the pygmy races of Africa, brachiocephalic skulls are the rule. So the characteristics of dolichocephaly is predominant in the Negro races, right? Which race has the dolichocephalic head? Dolichocephaly is typical for Australian Aborigines and native Southern Africans, right? And they said what? Let's go back. They said what? The Semites had dolichocephalic skulls, right? So let's read on. Semite, from Shemi, Hebrew word for the name Shem, son of Noah, who according to biblical tradition was the eponymous ancestor of the Semites. Semites are people of the Middle East and Africa who speak one of the Semitic languages, which are branches of the Afro-Asiatic family. Examples of such languages are Amharic, or Arabic, Aramaic, and Hebrew, right? So it said to the Middle East and Africa. Well, let's get a book that someone said about the Africans and their practice of Judaism. This is from Herman Moll. He was a cartographer and engraver born in 1654, right? And he wrote a book titled History and Geography, Atlas Geographus, A Complete System of Geography. We're going to go to volume 4. I believe it was volume 4. Now we're going to go to page 39. This is what Herman Moll had to say. This page 39. It says, we shall treat of the blacks when we come to Guinea, Negro land, and the cage of Good Hope where they inhabit, right? Leo says there are other kingdoms on the south frontiers of this country which are inhabited by a rich, industrious, and just sort of people. Judaism. Now remember, what did Kanye West say? What did Kanye West say? Let's go back. He said, black people can't be anti-Shem. We are Jew. Meaning what? We are Semites. We are Shemitic. Right? This is what this guy said. Judaism was the religion of the ancient Africans for a long time and succeeded by Christianity, right? But Mohammedanism prevailed in the 208th year of the Hagera, when all the Jews, Christians, and proselytes of the African religions that could be found were put to death. So, yeah, Islam is the reason that a lot of our people lost their Judaic customs, right? Yet, in process of time, their incessant quarrels made them neglect Muhammad's law and revolt from the Caliph of Baghdad, for which they were severely punished by the Mohammedan caliphs, who caused all their books to be burnt. They burnt our books. All right, we were practicing We were practicing Jews of so-called Judaism, and they burnt our books on suspicion that the knowledge of the arts and the sciences prompted them to contend Muhammad's law, right? Yeah, meanwhile, a lot of our people want to be damn Muslims, man. But anyway, let's speak on Shem as well, right? Real quick. Because I mentioned that another son of Shem was Elam. I want to do a little quick thing on Elam. This ain't going to be a full video on Elam, but I want to touch on it. So we go to 1 Chronicles 1 Chronicles chapter 1, verse 17. It reads, the sons of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram, and Uz, and Hol, and Gether, and Meshach. So let's look at Elam real quick. Elam would be modern day Iran / India. Alright. As a matter of fact, during the absolute height of the Mauryan dynasty in 260 BC, Iran was part of India. Right? I say that to say this. Harry Johnston is going to speak of the people of Elam. This is Harry Johnston. He was an explorer and botanist born in 1858. He wrote a book called The Negro in the New World by Sir Harry H. Johnston. This is what he had to say. This is what Sir Harry H. Johnston had to say on page 27 of his book, The Negro in the New World. It reads, the Elamites, see look, Elamites from Elam, let's go back. From Elam, the Elamites of Mesopotamia appear to have been a Negroid people with kinky hair and to have transmitted their racial type to the Jews and Syrians. There is a curliness of the hair together with the Negro eye and full lips in the portraiture of Assyria, which conveys the idea of evident Negro elements in Babylonia. Right? So it says the Elam passed their Negroid traits to the Jews and to the Syrians. Let's read to this bottom part. It says, the Jews are composed of 3 or 4 separate racial elements. The Asiatic Negroid strain shows itself occasionally in the curly hair, the long eye, and the proportions of the skull. Yeah, the dolichocephalic skull, I mentioned it earlier. The Jewish hybrids with the Negro in Jamaica and Ghana reproduce most strikingly the Assyrian type. It is quite conceivable that the great peninsula of Arabia was once populated as far as its natural conditions allowed by a primitive Negro stock. So they were in Arabia. See that? Which may have been later on partially exterminated by changing in unfavorable conditions of climate and by the aftercoming of the white man and his types. So the Negroid strain was made dormant or expelled due to the Caucasian invaders. And I've done videos on this again. I'll probably touch on the Arabs again in another video. I did a video, I think it was called The Original Arab. You can check it out. It was like 50 minutes. And I was dealing with, there were super dark-skinned Arabs and there were light-skinned Arabs. And the question was, why was that the case? Right? All that being said, here are some pictures of, this is Frieze of the Royal Guards of Darius I, 522 to 486 BC, called the 10,000 Immortals from the Ishtar Gate, the 8th gate of the inner city of Babylon. Now, these people are dark-skinned people. All right, now mind you, this was during the time of the Persians. Now, modern-day Persia is Iran, right? Now, these people right here, they look very similar to who? They look like the Dravidian peoples. All right, these are the Dravidian peoples. These are the dark-skinned peoples of India. All right, the Dravidian peoples. This is their region, right? They look very similar. Look at the skin complexion. Exact same skin tone. Dark-skinned. All right, these are all Dravidians from South India. All right, a dark-skinned people that once again resemble these royal guards of Darius I in complexion. All right, these are some more Dravidians. They kind of look somewhat akin to the Aboriginal Australians a little bit. And the Dravidians, I bring up the Dravidians because there's something known as the Alamo Dravidian language, Why? Because the Dravidians are of Elam. All right, one of the purest forms of the Elamites. All right, Elamo-Dravidian language. Elamite language of ancient Elam to the Dravidian languages. Yes, Dravidians are Sumerian Elamites. Elamites were considered a Semitic people. Yes, they are Semitic. Along with the Assyrians, Hebrews, Phoenicians, Assyrians, and the Chaldeans, right? So they were all Shemitic. Only reason I even bring this up is because that's proof that the Elamites were dark-skinned people. So it's not far-fetched at all that the so-called black man goes back to the line of Shem as well. Not all so-called black people, because you have black Hamites, right? But I'm talking about us in specifics. And that's through history, geography, anthropology, and more. And through prophecy. All right, the curse of Deuteronomy, they only fit one people group. All right? And it's not the modern people pretending to be us. Right? But anyway, they're not under the curses. And I just wanted to point out this damn lie too. I typed in, are Elamites Iranian? And it says the Elamites were not Iranians, nor were they Semitic. So they say the Elamites were not Semitic. Now, they don't know what the hell is going on, but this is just simple lies. We know that the Elamites are Semitic because the sons of Shem were who? Elam. So case closed. I'm going to believe the Bible over whoever wrote this dumbass comment. Just wanted to go on that too. But let's continue on with the Semites, right? It then says Semites, peoples whose native tongue belongs to the group of Semitic languages. They originally inhabited an area in Arabia and spoke a common language, Proto-Semitic, from which the Semitic languages descend. Among the modern Semites are Arabs, native Israelis, and many Ethiopians. Now I'm going to read that again. Among the Semites are Arabs, Israelis, allegedly, and many Ethiopians. Well, this Ethiopian comment makes me think of what the Roman historian Tacitus had to say. Cornelius Tacitus, born in 56 AD. Let's see what he had to say about the Ethiopians and the Jews. So this is the Histories of Tacitus. Book 5? Page 399. He says it plain as day. He says, many assert that the Jews were an Ethiopian race, driven out by fear or hatred to seek a new home in the reign of King Cephas. So many asserted that the Jews were an Ethiopian race. Well, Ethiopians are what? They're black. Duh. Right? Matter of fact, let me do this real quick. Let me pull this up real quick for the people. Ethiopian. For the people real quick. For Google. Right? So it says, many assert that the Jews were an Ethiopian race driven out by fear of hate or hatred to seek a new home in the reign of King Cephas. So they thought they were an Ethiopian race. Well, the Ethiopians are black people. The word Ethiopian means burnt face. I had a brother tell me in the comment sections, I think it was on my Moabite video, that he said also Ethiopia can also mean shining one. I have to look more into that. But a native or inhabitant of Ethiopia, a member of peoples described by the ancient Greeks as dark-skinned, living far to the south. So in other words, many assert that the Jews were a dark-skinned race of people. That's what it means, right? Because Ethiopian means a dark-skinned people living far to the south. All right, and let's add on more to that. When we go to the Lachish reliefs, the Lachish reliefs is an Assyrian it's a relief of the Assyrian victory over the kingdom of Judah, right? These are the Lachish reliefs. You can look this up on your own. And we're going to focus on this image right here. You see these men with the afros? These people right here are the Jews, all right, the people of Judah. Let's see what Edward Plumtree had to say about these people. Guy born in 1821. In his book, The Assyrian and Babylonian Inscriptions and Their Bearing of the Old Testament Scriptures, where he states in page 448 that it is significant that the captives are for the most part represented as having woolly hair, as though they had belonged to the Ethiopian army of Tirhaka. In other words, they had the same hair of the Ethiopians. All right, woolly hair afros. All right, Sir Austin Henry Layard says that these people were clearly Jews, though. He was born in 1817. And this is what he had to say in his book, Discoveries of the Ruins of Nineveh and Babylon, page 129. He says, the captives were undoubtedly Jews. Their physiognomy was strikingly indicated in the sculptures, and they got the afros that were akin to the Ethiopians, right? And let's just do a comparison real quick. This is the Assyrian reliefs. This is a mid-century African woman's bronze head sculpture. All right, from the 1950s. Look at her hair. Look at their hair. Same hair texture. These are Assyrians flaying Hebrews alive. This is an African sculpture. Same hair texture engraving. Right? Same thing. You know, ain't no way around that. And here's even more for more proof. This is a Sarson's head of a Moor in Italy. Same hair texture. This is a Blackamoor sculpture. Same hair texture. Right? Then we can go to a scripture to follow that up where the Israelites are being compared to the Ethiopians. Amos 9:7. Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, saith the Lord Yahawah? And not I brought up Israel out of the land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Caphtor, and the Syrians from Ker. Now I remember I heard a rabbi break this down horribly. And he was like, oh, the reason Israelites were compared to the Ethiopians is because the Ethiopians had dark skin, which was a trait that was different from every other people group, which is a lie. The Aboriginal Australians aren't Ethiopians. The Dravidians that I just showed you aren't Ethiopians. And they also have the same dark skin. So dark skin is not unique to the Ethiopians, right? So the Israelites were being compared to the Ethiopians because they had similar skin complexion. All right, let's get other translations of Amos 9:7. Are not you Israelites the same to me as the Cushites, declares the Lord? Right? Are you not like the Cushites? Like meaning similar to, right? Cushites, Ethiopians. Aren't you people of Israelites, people of Cush to me? As sons of Cushim, are you not to me, O sons of Israel? So on and so forth, right? So there's that. Then we go to the how Israelite slaves made bricks with or without straw. There are literal pictures of Israelites making bricks. All right, you can read about that in Exodus 5 and 6 through 5 and 9, where the people had straw to make brick and things of that nature. Right, I did a video on this already. But these authors of this are also called white people, right? All these three people, right? And they said that these were Israelites. It says Nubian and Semitic slaves mix water and mud to create mud bricks, while a seated Egyptian official in the upper right oversees their work, right? So, and they say Nubian and Semitic. It's probably all Semitic right here, all right? But you know, and this is the guy overseeing their work. He's got the same dark skin as these other people. Shows you about the Egyptians, but I've already did a video on that. But let's continue on proving that black people are Jews, right? John O'Gilby, born in 1600, wrote a book called, I ain't gonna read this big title, but Africa being an accurate description of the regions of Egypt, Barbary, Libya, the land of the Negroes, etc., right? John O'Gilby. We're going to go to page 334 where he talks about Negro land, and he says, the country of the Jews or kingdom of Zeman, right? It says, calls the Italian, it says, calls this country in Italian, Terra Guidi, right? And this is in Negro land, Terra Guidi, right? Zeman instead of Zeman or Zeman. And it's west to the kingdom of Benin, right? So Terra Guidi, what does Terra Guidi mean? Guidi means the Jews, Judea. Terra means land, so it means land of the Judeans or land of the Jews, right? Guideo, Judean, right? And we can even follow it up with a map by Livio Sanudo, a guy born in the 1500s, born in 1520. He wrote a map called Africa Tabulata 12, 1588, reprinted in 1889. And he also calls this region the land of the Jews, right? He calls this region Udarum Terra, right? When we zoom in on this, it says Udarum Terra, right? And for those of you that don't know, the I is really a J and the V is really a U. So it stands for Judarum Terra. All right. In the medieval period, they were interchangeable. You could interchange a V with a U. So that's a U, that's a U. That's Judarum. And then this I is a J, right? The I is a J. The J and the I could be used interchangeable. So it really means Judarum Terra, which would translate to land of the Jews. Judarum Terra. Land of the Jews. English to Latin. Terra Judarum. Right? Easy. And that's from the 1500s. Judarum Terra. So they been knew that there were Jews in Africa. They been knew. We go to James Gray Jackson. He was a business person. He died in 1850, so he was probably born early 1800s or 1700s. He wrote a book called An Account of Timbuktu and the Hausa territories in the interior of Africa. Right? So that's like central to West Africa. Page 475, he states, Yehudi, a place of great trade. This place is reported to be inhabited by one of the lost tribes of Israel, possibly an immigration from the tribe of Judah. Yehuda in African Arabic signifies Judah. Yehudi signifies Jew. It is not impossible that many of the lost tribes of Israel may be found dispersed in the interior regions of Africa. When we shall become better acquainted with the continent, it is certain that some of the nations that possess the country eastward of Palestine, when the Israelites were a favored nation, have immigrated to Africa. All right, lost tribes of Israel, Jews in the regions of Africa, the interior regions of Africa, right? And for those of you that don't know, he said Yehudi or Yehuda or Yehuda. That simply means Judah. Yehuda, Judah. Yehuda, Judah. Easy. All right. Or in the Paleo Hebrew, we say Yahawah. But we'll go to Elisee Reclus, born in 1830. See what he had to say in his book. The Earth and Its Inhabitants, the Universal Geography, Volume 12, West Africa, page 176. He says, they have been compared to the Saracos, the Jews of West Africa, but unlike them, are chief wholesome dealers carrying on large caravan trade between Sierra Leone and Timbuktu and extending their expeditions from the Senegal to the lower Niger. Right? The Saracos, the Jews of West Africa. Saraco, West African nation. All right, and he called them Jews. This is what they look like. Easy. Right? Let's go to Leo Africanus. Born in 1494. Let's see what he had to say. In his book, The History and Description of Africa. All right? And the notable things therein contain Volume 1 by Leo Africanus. We'll go to page 32. This is what he had to say. He says, howbeit, they say that upon the Nilus do inhabit two great nations, or two great and populous nations. One of the Jews towards the west. Remember that I is really a J. One of the Jews toward the west under the government of a mighty king. The other more southerly, consisting of the Amazonas or warlike tribe. He's talking about the Dahomey tribe. Warlike women, where we will speak more of at large in our relation to Monomotapa. Or Monomotapa. All right, he's talking about the Dahomey, the Amazon-like warrior women. And Benin is by Nigeria, Togo, Ghana. Right? This is the area of Benin. And he made mention of what? Jews. Simple, right? We also read about that we also read about Benin. Where was that at? That was at the Kingdom of Benin. Paraguay, the country of Jews. This is by John O'Gilby. So, there you go. And let's go to the Nautical Magazine and Naval Chronicle for 1870. We're going to go to page 529. Or 329. I think that's a 5, though. And it says the Loango family. Loango is located in the Congo. And it says, Loango family. The inhabitants of Loango do not differ materially from those of Gabon and Cape Lopez. It is probable that the Jewish type of character above mentioned forms a larger element population here than it does on the Pongo coast. And this it was doubtless which led to the Roman Catholic missionaries who labored here during the 16th and 17th centuries to the conclusion that they had found black Jews in Luongo. Black Jews in Luongo. All right? Barbet states that in the reign of Don John II, and about the close of the 15th century, large numbers of Jews were expelled from Portugal and taken to the coast of southern Guinea, that the island of St. Thomas, right? So the black Jews of Luongo as well as in St. Thomas. I've done a video on the black Jews expelled from Portugal also. All right, and the kingdom of Luongo is in the state of the Republic of Congo, southern Gabon, and Cabinda, right? Let's get another book, The Negroes and the Jews by Lenora E. Burson, page 212, where she says, Negroes claim to be Jewish is legitimate. What? She said, what? Negroes claim to be Jewish is legitimate. The land of Israel is located in Western Asia and borders of northern Africa. All the native inhabitants of the region were non-white, correct. When Spain expelled its Jews in 1492, many of them went to Africa, correct. It seems probable that some of them were brought later to America as slaves. It's not probable, it's factual. The spirituals never sing of African rivers. It's always the Jordan or the Red Sea. They don't sing about African chiefs or kings. It's David or Moses or some other Jewish characteristics from the Bible. Yeah, like you hear Kumbaya or Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Kumbaya means come here, God, or come here, my God. Right? Kumbaya. Right? Then you got Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. It's talking about the chariots that picked up Elijah coming forth to carry me home. So our people knew about the chariots at the time of slavery. Right? And on top of that, you have something known as a ghetto. Well, a ghetto is a Jewish quarter in a city. All right? And the ghetto is a similar characteristic of a ghetto or its inhabitants, especially with relations to African American culture. Exactly. And I've done videos on this in the past. For more information, you can watch the Hidden Black Jews of West Africa, Jews that fled to Africa, or the one that I recommend, my most recent one. I went pretty in depth in this video, The Black Sons of God. It was a month ago. Go watch that for the most insight on that. But now let's go to the biblical. We went to the historical, anthropological, and all that, historical accounts. Now we're going to go to see what the Bible says about the complexion of the Israelites, all right, of the Jews. Let's go to Songs of Solomon 1 and 5. I am black, but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. I am black and beautiful. I am black but lovely, right? Straight up tell you I am black, right? And the tents, and it says like the tents of Kedar. Well, these are the tents of Kedar, meaning they were very dark skinned, clearly. Songs of Solomon 1 and 6. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun hath looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They made me keeper of the vineyards, but my own vineyard have I not kept. All right, the reason they say that, the sun looked upon us, because black people also can get tans. These are so-called black people with tan lines. So if you're in the sun a lot, you're going to look more like that, right? So that's on that. So in conclusion to that, and I'm still go a little bit further, but he said, let's go back to his original statement. I don't want to misquote him. He said some of the stuff I was saying was true. We can't be anti-Shem because we are Jew. So until you do your facts, until you really do your facts, yeah, and I just showed you the facts. Now let's go to his last part before I get out of here. He says, the fake indoctrination that y'all put into the schools and all that, right? Exactly. They fake. Oh well, you guys are slaves, and you know Africa sold other Africans into slavery. Yeah, blah blah blah. You know. So the indoctrination ain't working anymore. But let's get some more scriptures proving about the skin complexion. Lamentations 5 and 10. Our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. The famine has blackened our skin as though baked in an oven. Our skin is black like an oven, right? And this is a woman. She put her picture of herself in the wintertime. This is a picture of herself in the summertime. All right, blackened. All right, Job 30:30. My skin is black upon me and my bones are burned with the heat. Funny because Herodotus said the same thing about the Egyptians. Herodotus, the historian, he says the people dwelling there, the Egyptians, are black because of the heat. Just like what Job said, my skin is black upon me and my bones are burned with the heat. Same thing. People like to try to make, oh no, it says white and ruddy. Debunk. Song of Solomon 5:10, they say, my beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000. He's not talking about skin complexion. He's talking about clear, dry, plain. All right, the proof of that is in Songs of Solomon 5:10. Other versions, it says, my beloved is radiant and ruddy, dark and dazzling. So it's not talking about him being an actual so-called white man. Mind you, the term white in relations to a ethnicity is a new term. Even during the time of Jamestown, nobody was calling themselves white. Right? My beloved is radiant, ruddy, dark and dazzling, radiant, ruddy, dazzling, ruddy, white and ruddy. All right. So let's go to Acts 13:1 for more. It says, now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simon, that was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene and Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. And this word really ain't Niger, it's really the N-word, but YouTube will take my video down. So it says Simon was called the N-word. Simon is a Hebrew name that means hearkening or listening. And the word Niger means black, a surname of Simon or Simeon. He was probably so called from his dark complexion. And it says Niger, of Latin origin, black, Niger. Yes, the N-word. And that's even where you get the N-word from. Term N-word comes from the word Niger in the 1700s, the color black. Now going back to what Kanye said about the indoctrination. Let me move this real quick. The fake indoctrination that y'all put in the schools. Yeah, right. And that makes me think of Proverbs 3:31. Envy thou not the oppressors and choose none of his ways. Yeah, I mean, you got to be out of your damn mind to let another nation of people tell you about your history group, teach you about your history. That's dumb as hell, right? It makes no sense, but that's what our people like to do. All right, choose none of his ways, and they made us choose their ways. They made us learn their history that they fed to us. They force-fed us, all right, in the form of integration when they integrated the schools, right? So now we got to learn their history. And they also did it to the Native Americans with American Indian boarding schools, where children were first forced to cut their hair, wear uniforms, and march in formations. All right. And parents who refuse to send their children to these schools could be legally imprisoned, deprived of resources such as food and clothing, all right, which was scarce in the reservations. And hundreds died in these schools, man. So they forced it to do this, man. But now, guess what? Proverbs 3:31, envy thou not the oppressor and choose none of his ways. So that's it on that, man. Quick video. Well, not really a quick video, but, you know, I proved my point and where I was coming from. So with that, I say peace to the 12. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father, the Most High, whose name is Yahawah, in the name of his only begotten Son, yahawashi. Yahawah is the name of Heavenly Father, who's commonly known as God. Yahawashi is the Savior of the nation of Israel, who's commonly known as Jesus Christ. I want to say shalom, which means peace to you people listening and learning. You brothers doing this work, truth, sincerity, and you elders has been doing this thing before me, right? And I got to say again, I don't have these celebrities in high regard because I really recently heard that Kanye West is calling himself the new Jesus. Might do a video on that. Anyway, peace.